Digal show. Um, just want to discuss a few things about actually Iran. Um, I know we touched on the geopolitical situation, obviously the configuration in the Middle East. You're looking at obviously Hamas, Gaza, Israel, obviously what they're doing in Rafah at the moment, which is very sad to see, to be honest. You have the Yemen situation where the Houthis still doing what they're doing. You've got Hezbollah in the north, in Lebanon. You've got a situation in Iran itself, and the tension between Israel and Iran after they killed some people at the Iranian consulate, and then Iran then retaliated with some drones and strikes. Uh, since then, there's been a bit of a toning down. So the US doesn't want war, Iran doesn't want war. Their sort of retaliation to the consulate strike was just to launch a bunch of drones, Shahed drones that were really cheap. Um, all in different places around Israel, and then obviously the Iron Dome shot it down. But it was interesting to see the state of panic that the US and Jordan, the UK, all these countries came together to support Israel, which was also quite interesting to see. Um, like an eventual confrontation is coming. The reason why I think that is because of a certain man called Donald Trump. I believe, I predict that he will actually win the election, especially with all these charges hanging over him. I think that will give him the boost that he needs, to be honest, which was probably the worst decision Democrats have ever made, to be honest. He gets into office. And as we know, he's a staunch Zionist. He moved the Israeli embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv. You know, he wasn't too keen on trying to establish peace with Palestine. Instead, he tried to circumvent them by going to Saudi Arabia, etc. And trying to do an Abraham Accords, which has now fallen apart because obviously the situation in Gaza. I don't think will come back on the table until there's a resolution, a proper resolution to the situation in Gaza, not just the tentative peace that keeps getting broken up with endless occupation, etc. Like an actual two-state solution is the only way I can foresee Israel being accepted in the Middle East by other countries. However, in the US, the position, the neocons, and a lot of the hawkish Republicans, the hawkish Democrats, they seem to think that the other way is to actually pushing forward with the Abraham Accords by force, by paying off Israel's neighbors. So they paid off Egypt, Jordan previously. Maybe they'll start paying off Saudi and all these other nations, and then actually just taking out once and for all the big bad boss, the final solution, right? The final boss in the Middle East. So they got rid of Iraq, Syria. They destabilized Libya, destabilized Syria, Iraq, a few other countries, Yemen, right? All the major players that were probably quite anti Israel have been sort of knocked out of orbit. Now, the last one, and probably the most difficult nut to crack, is Iran. Because Iran, it's a huge country. It has a high sort of economy, a large economy. Despite all the sanctions that have been placed on it, it seems to be doing somewhat okay. Um, Obviously not optimum, but they have a lot of oil as well, a lot of resources, a lot of natural resources. They have access to one side of the Caspian Sea, the other side they have access to uh, um, uh, the ocean passes my mind, the Strait of Hormuz as well. So they have a lot of strategic choke points to the south and to the north, and they're kind of a big hegemon in the region in terms of global size, sort of size in the Middle East. It's either Saudi, Iran, or Israel in terms of the three major powers in that region. Um, so a lot of the more hawkish neocons have been pushing for war with Iran, preemptive strikes, take out the nuclear capabilities, etc., etc. Now, what happened when Trump was in office is he actually pulled away the Iranian nuclear deal. Now, I think that's probably the worst decision ever any president could have made in that situation, because you had the Iranian nuclear threat contained, and you had relative uh, uh, ease access for all the UN inspectors to come in and view the nuclear facilities, and they stated that there was no enrichment above a certain amount going on. There wasn't certain uranium enrichments and all this other step processes that are involved in the process of nuclear proliferation. And still, Trump took that away and decided to become hawkish on Iran, take away the nuclear deal, and then start putting sanctions on Iran. So, from Iran's perspective, they're like, well, look at all the countries around us. You've taken out Iraq, you've taken out Libya. Where next? Listen, we already know what the drill is. If we don't have nuclear weapons, we're not safe. The only countries that are safe from the United States are the ones that have nuclear weapons, i.e., Russia, countries like Pakistan, India. You know, countries with nuclear weapons tend to be safe. China, they wouldn't strike those countries because the you know the negatives will. North Korea, another one. The devastation that would wreak on America itself would be that deterrent. So from Iran's perspective, they're like, well, we will full scale ahead now and get nuclear weapon as soon as possible, because if we don't, we're pretty screwed. Now, in the US, and I think when Trump actually does get into office, these neocons and Lindsey Graham's, John Bolton's, Nikki Haley's, these people are going to start entering his administration. He's going to start making the same mistakes he made last time by putting a bunch of war hawks in there. John Bolton, Lindsey Graham. I think he's going to make peace with DeSantis, Nikki Haley, JD Vance, all staunch Zionists, back Israel to the hill, destroy Israel's neighbors, basically, type of people. So I foresee that eventually, once a sort of schism may happen, it may be with Hezbollah, it may be with another version of Hamas if they remain, or something like that, and there will be a preemptive strike that will be attempted at Iran's nuclear facilities, and from there you're going to have all-out regional war. Iran will try to destroy Israel, and vice versa. And I think you'll see a bit of a configuration in the region. Now, I don't know how much active role Russia and China would play, but they won't certainly let Iran be destroyed. So this is something to keep an eye on, and I think this is coming. I would hazard a guess maybe in two years or so, somewhere within that region, because sort of Israel's wants to capitalize on all the hegemon that it has inside the West, but that's waning. Despite all the money, despite AIPAC, despite the lobby, despite everything, it's waning, and a lot of it's due to their actions. So they need to capitalize as soon as possible. And for them, the final boss, the final person that they need to get is the Ayatollah. So we'll see how it goes, but I'll keep you updated on that regard.